All right, so you know how we love to really get into something here on the deep dive?
Right.
Like pull out all the little fascinating details, those little things that make you think, I didn't know that.
Exactly. Those little nuggets you can use to impress your friends.
Exactly. And today, we've got I think, a really fun way to do just that. Um, we're going to try something a little different today.
A little quiz.
A quiz. Exactly. 10 questions, all about penguins.
Yeah,
So
penguins.
if you want to, become the most interesting person at your next water cooler conversation,
Virtual or otherwise.
yeah, exactly. Stick with us. This is your kind of like your cheat sheet to some really cool penguin facts.
Yeah. Penguins are fascinating creatures, and there's a lot to discover about them. So we'll ask a question, give you four possible
And
answers.
we'll talk about them a bit.
Exactly. Discuss them a little, see what we think, and then we'll reveal the answer.
Yeah, and it's not really about getting all the answers right. It's more about just uh, uncovering those kind of fun little details.
Exactly. Enjoying the journey.
Yeah. All right. Ready to start.
Absolutely. Hit me with question one.
Okay. Question number 1. The word penguin was originally used for which bird? And your options are A, emperor penguin, B, great auk, C, puffin, or D, Arctic tern. So when we think about originally used, it makes me think like got to go way back.
Yeah, we're going back in time a bit here. So let's think about these options. A, the emperor penguin. Now, they're definitely iconic. I mean, they are the largest penguins alive today.
Yeah, the emperors.
The true residents of the southern hemisphere. But like you said, originally used suggests we need to delve a bit deeper into history.
Right. Okay. So option B then, the great auk. Now I have a vague picture of this bird in my head,
Hmm.
like a flightless bird, northern hemisphere, and I feel like they went extinct.
They did, yeah. Sadly, in the mid 19th century. And what's really interesting is that those early European explorers, they noticed a physical resemblance between the great auk and the birds we now call penguins, way down south in the southern hemisphere. They saw these similarities.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. What about option C, the puffin? Now they're also a black and white seabird, right? But they can fly.
That's right, they can fly, and they're in the northern hemisphere. And, that black and white plumage, it's a great example of convergent evolution. So unrelated species developing similar traits because they live in, similar environments.
Right. Like how bats and birds both have wings, but they're not like closely related.
Exactly. They evolved those features independently to solve similar problems.
Right. Fascinating. Okay, and then our last option, option D, is the Arctic tern. And those are, if I remember correctly, like huge migrators, right? They fly super long distances.
That's right. They're famous for their incredible migrations. They're definitely birds of the air, not quite as aquatic as our penguin friends.
Right. So thinking about it from a historical perspective, which one would you say is the correct answer?
Well, if we're going way back, considering those early explorers and their observations, the answer is B, the great auk. It turns out that term penguin, it first popped up in written records in the late 16th century, and it was used to refer to the great auk.
Hmm.
And then as explorers ventured further south and encountered those flightless birds in the southern hemisphere, the ones that shared a resemblance, they just kind of they applied the same name. And what's even more fascinating is that the Latin name, pinguinus, it was initially used to classify the great auk.
Wow. So it's like the name got transferred over, basically.
It did, in a way. It shows you how, even in science, those first impressions can sometimes lead to these unexpected connections.
That's a great little historical tidbit.
Oh.
Okay, so moving on to question number 2. What is the only penguin species found north of the equator? And the options are A, king penguin, B, Galapagos penguin, C, African penguin, or D, Humboldt penguin. This one's a bit of a geography challenge.
It is. It's all about location, location, location.
Right. So let's think about it. Option A, the king penguin. Now, they're large, they're striking, but I'm pretty sure they live in, like, the subantarctic regions, right? Pretty far south.
You're absolutely right. They're way down south in those icy, cold waters, so not north of the equator.
Okay. What about option C, the African penguin? Well, the name kind of gives it away. They're in Africa, which is below the equator, right?
Correct. Southern hemisphere.
Okay. So that leaves us with B, Galapagos penguin, and D, Humboldt penguin. Now, I know that the Humboldt penguin is found along the coast of, like, Peru and Chile. So that's still south, right?
It is. They're still south of the equator, but they are influenced by some interesting ocean currents that bring them a bit closer.
Right, right. So that must mean that the Galapagos penguin is our answer, right?
Right.
Because the Galapagos Islands, they actually straddle the equator.
You got it. You're absolutely right. The only penguin species to venture north of the equator is the Galapagos penguin, and you know what makes that possible?
I have a feeling it has something to do with those ocean currents you mentioned.
Exactly. It's all about the Humboldt Current. This cold current originates way down in the Antarctic, and it flows all the way up the western coast of South America. It sweeps right past the Galapagos Islands.
So it brings that cold water right up to the equator.
It does, and that cold water, it's full of nutrients, and all those nutrients support the fish and the marine life that penguins depend on. It basically creates a little pocket of penguin-friendly habitat right there on the equator.
Wow. So those ocean currents, they're like nature's highways, right?
They are. They transport nutrients, they influence climate, they play such a crucial role in the lives of marine creatures.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to question number 3. What does a group of penguins in the water call themselves? Is it A, colony, B, waddle, C, raft, or D, pod? This one's all about penguin vocabulary.
It is. It's about how we talk about these social birds. So let's look at these terms. Option A, colony. It's a very general term, right? We use it for all sorts of animals that live together, especially when they're breeding or nesting.
Right, like you'll hear about penguin colonies on land.
Exactly. But in the water, it's a bit different. Then there's option B, waddle. Now that definitely conjures up a specific image.
Oh yeah, that adorable way they move on land, like a little clumsy, but so charming.
Exactly. And waddle is specifically what we call a group of penguins when they're on land, not so much in the water. Then there's option D, pod.
Now that makes me think of marine mammals, like dolphins or whales.
Right. Sleek swimmers of the ocean, not quite the same vibe as penguins.
Right. Okay. So by process of elimination and also thinking about what a group of penguins in the water might actually look like, I'm going with sea raft.
You're right on target. It's sea raft. When penguins are in the water, they gather in these groups called rafts. So they've got their land term, waddle, and their water term, raft. It's like they have different social events depending on the location.
Right. Different names for different occasions. Penguin social etiquette? Who knew? Okay. Question 4 is all about that classic penguin look. Which of these is a reason why penguins are black and white? A, to attract mates. B, to absorb more sunlight. C, for camouflage, known as countershading. Or D, to regulate body temperature on land. It's such a striking color scheme.
It is, and it serves a very specific purpose. So let's break it down. Option A, to attract mates. Now, penguins definitely have courtship rituals and displays, right? They use vocalizations and behaviors to attract a partner.
Right.
But that black and white coloring, it's not really thought to be the primary way they signal their attractiveness.
Okay. What about option B, to absorb more sunlight? Because black does absorb heat, right?
Yeah.
And that would seem helpful in those cold environments. But then they also have that white belly, so it can't just be about that.
You're right. And that white belly is key to understanding option C, camouflage or countershading. Imagine you're a predator in the water. You're an orca or a leopard seal looking up from below. A penguin's white belly blends in with the lighter surface of the water.
I see.
And then, if you're a predator like a bird looking down from above, the penguin's dark back is harder to see against the dark ocean depths. So it works both ways.
Wow. So it's like having built-in invisibility almost.
Exactly. It's all about blending in, staying hidden from predators above and below. And then there's option D, to regulate body temperature on land. Now, while their dense feathers definitely provide insulation, the color itself isn't the main way they control their temperature when they're out of the water.
Right.
They have other mechanisms, like panting or seeking shade, so the primary reason for their black and white plumage is C, camouflage. It's that counter shading that provides that crucial protection in their watery world.
It's amazing how nature just figures these things out, right? All about survival. Okay, question 5 is all about speed. Which of these penguins is known as the fastest underwater bird? A, emperor penguin. B, little blue penguin. C, Gen 2 penguin. Or D, macaroni penguin. Who's the speed demon of the penguin world?
Yeah, who's got the need for speed? Well, let's see. A, the emperor penguin. They're known for their deep dives. They can hold their breath for incredible amounts of time, but speed isn't their primary superpower.
Right. What about option B, the little blue penguin? Aren't they like the smallest penguin species?
They are. They're the smallest, and they're very agile. They tend to hunt in shallower waters.
Yeah, they seem more like the darting type, not the long-distance racers.
Exactly. Then there's option D, the macaroni penguin. Now, they're one of those crested penguins, right? With those stylish feathers on their heads. They look fast, but it's not really their defining characteristic.
So that leaves us with the Gen 2 penguin. I always get the impression that they're, like, really determined, even when they're just waddling around on land.
And you're absolutely right. That determination translates to some serious speed in the water. Gen 2 penguins have been clocked swimming at speeds up to 36 kilometers per hour. That's about 22 miles per hour.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So the Gen 2 penguin is our speed champion.
It is. They're the undisputed winners of any penguin swimming race.
Okay, question 6. Emperor penguins incubate their eggs in a unique way. How do they do it? A, in nests built of pebbles. B, in burrows dug in the snow. C, by placing the egg on their feet and covering it with the brood pouch. Or D, the female incubates while the male hunts. It's a tough life in Antarctica. They have to have some clever strategies to survive.
They do, and their breeding habits are a prime example. Option A, nests built of pebbles. That's a strategy used by some penguins, but not the emperors. They live in a very different environment.
Right, it's all ice and snow where they are.
Exactly. They don't have access to those kinds of materials. Option B, burrows dug in the snow. Again, some penguins use burrows for protection.
Right.
But emperor penguins don't create these for their eggs. Their breeding grounds are often on open ice.
Makes sense. What about option D? The female incubates while the male hunts. I feel like that's a pretty common pattern in the bird world, right?
It is, and in most penguin species, both parents share incubation duties. But the emperor penguin, they do things a little differently.
So it must be option C then, placing the egg on their feet and covering it with a brood pouch. I vaguely remember something about this. Doesn't the male play a key role?
He does. Both male and female emperor penguins care for the egg, but the male takes on the primary responsibility for incubation. After the female lays the egg, she heads off to sea to feed and replenish her energy reserves. And the male, he balances that single precious egg on his feet.
What's his feet?
Yeah, it keeps it off the freezing ground, and then he covers it with a special brood pouch. It's this flap of skin lined with feathers that provides warmth and protection. He does this for the entire winter.
Wow. So he's basically like a walking incubator.
He is. It's an incredible feat of endurance and dedication, and it's all to ensure the survival of their chick in that hardy Antarctic environment.
That is truly remarkable. Talk about committed parenting. Okay, question 7. What do penguins have that allows them to drink salt water? A, specialized kidneys. B, cerebral gland. C, highly efficient gills. Or D, the ability to process salt in their stomach. They live in the ocean, so they must have a way to deal with all that salt.
They do. They've evolved some pretty clever mechanisms. Option A, specialized kidneys. Now, their kidneys are adapted for life at sea, but they're not the primary organ responsible for removing excess salt.
Okay, what about option C, highly efficient gills? That's not right for penguins, right?
No, penguins are birds. They breathe air.
Right.
Gills are for aquatic creatures that extract oxygen from water. So no gills for penguins. Option D, the ability to process salt in their stomach.
This doesn't sound right.
It's not. Their stomach is for digesting food, not for filtering out salt. Which leaves us with option B, a suborbital gland. Have you ever heard of that?
I think I read something about a gland above their eyes that's involved in salt removal.
You're absolutely right. Penguins have this special gland located just above each eye, and it acts like a natural desalination plant. It filters excess salt from their bloodstream and excretes it through their nasal passages.
Wow. So they can literally drink seawater and get rid of all the extra salt.
They can. It's a remarkable adaptation that allows them to thrive in their salty environment.
It was brilliant. Nature is full of these amazing solutions. Okay, getting close to the end now. Question 8. Around how many different species of penguins are currently recognized by the International Ornithologists' Union? A, 12, B, 15, C, 18, or D, 21? We often think of penguins as one group, but there's actually quite a bit of variety, right?
There is, and the exact number can fluctuate a bit as our understanding evolves. But the International Ornithologists' Union, or the IOU, they're the authority when it comes to classifying birds. So they're the ones to look to for the most up-to-date count.
So how many species do they currently recognize?
As of right now, the IOU recognizes 18 distinct species of penguins.
18.
Yeah, and they're grouped into 6 different genera, so there's quite a bit of diversity within the penguin family. Different sizes, different habitats, different behaviors. It's a testament to their adaptability and their evolutionary success.
That's amazing. Okay, 2 more questions to go. Question 9. What is the oldest known fossil penguin species and where was it found? A. Ichthyophilus selassie in Peru. B. Nordenskjold's giant penguin in Antarctica.
Whoa.
C. Waimanu manaringi in New Zealand. Or D. Perdipes in Argentina. Time to dig into some penguin prehistory.
Absolutely. Let's go way back in time. Option A, Ichthyophilus selassie. This one was discovered in Peru, and it was a giant. We're talking like 5 feet tall. But it's not the oldest penguin fossil we've found.
What about option B, Nordenskjold's giant penguin? That one was found in Antarctica, right?
It was, and it was even bigger than the Ichthyophilus, almost 6 feet tall. But again, not the oldest.
Okay, so not the giants. What about option D, Perdipes?
Ah, that one's from Argentina. It's a significant fossil dating back about 42 million years, but there's one that predates it.
Which must mean that option C, Waimanu manaringi from New Zealand, is our winner. That name sounds familiar. I think it comes up a lot when talking about early penguin evolution.
It does. Waimanu manaringi is currently recognized as the oldest known penguin species, with fossils dating back about 62 million years. These early penguins were already flightless, but they weren't as adapted for swimming as their modern relatives. Their wings were longer, suggesting they might have used their feet more for propulsion in the water, but those wings were already on their way to becoming the powerful flippers we see today.
62 million years. That's incredible. So penguins have been around for a really long time.
They have. They've witnessed a lot of changes on this planet.
All right, last question, question 10. What is the term for a penguin born with brown rather than black plumage? A, albino penguin. B, melanistic penguin.
We'll see.
Isabelline penguin. Or D, leucistic penguin. So it's not always just black and white in the penguin world, huh?
Yep. Genetic variations can lead to some interesting color differences. So let's look at these terms. Option A, albino penguin. Now, albinism is a condition where there's a complete lack of melanin, which is the pigment that gives color to skin, hair, and feathers.
So an albino penguin would be all white.
Exactly, with pink eyes.
Okay. What about option B, melanistic penguin? That's the opposite, right?
It is. Melanism is an excess of melanin, so a melanistic penguin would be all black. Then there's option D, leucistic penguin. Leucism is a partial loss of pigmentation. It can result in pale or patchy coloration.
But not specifically brown, right?
Leucistic penguins can have white feathers, but they don't necessarily have that brown hue. Which leaves us with option C, is baleen penguin. That's the term for a penguin with brown plumage instead of black.
Ah, okay. I've heard that term before with other animals that have unusual brown coloring.
It's a genetic mutation that affects melanin production. So instead of producing black pigment, they produce a diluted brownish pigment. And sadly, Isabelline penguins often face challenges in the wild. Their unusual coloring makes them less camouflaged, and there's even some evidence that they might be less successful at attracting mates.
Wow. So even a subtle difference in color can have a big impact on their survival.
It can. It shows how finely tuned nature is and how every trait plays a role.
Well, that brings our penguin quiz to an end.
That was fun.
It was. We learned a lot about penguins today. We talked about their origins, their amazing adaptations for surviving in all sorts of environments, their unique social behaviors, and even some of the rare variations within their species. I think it really goes to show that even animals we think we know can surprise us with fascinating details when we take a closer look.
Absolutely. And when you think about how long penguins have been around that 62 million year lineage and all the environmental changes they've witnessed, it really makes you wonder what the future holds for them, especially with the impacts of climate change on their icy habitats.
That's a really good point. What new adaptations might we see in the future? It's something to think about. Well, thank you all for joining us for this penguin deep dive. Hopefully you enjoyed the quiz format. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring and keep asking questions.